MacBook Pro died a few months ago after 8 long years of service, and I was on the fence about getting a new one because I wasn't 100% satisfied with what Apple had to offer at the time. So when during the summer event Apple announced that they will release an iPad specific OS with a good file system and a way to connect external devices more easily, I decided to switch my entire photo and video workflow from macOS, Final Cut Pro 10 and Lightroom Classic CC to the iPad Pro with LumaFusion and Lightroom CC. So when I was in the States, I went and bought myself an iPad Pro 12.9 inch with half a terabyte of storage and a few accessories that would make my life much easier, like the Logitech Slim Folio keyboard, the Apple Pencil, a tiny portable 2 terabyte SSD from Samsung, USB-C of course, and the Hyperdrive dongle, which has my SD card readers and extra USB and even an HDMI port. So as I said, I was in the States and I went for a long road trip over 4 weeks, and I used the iPad Pro to do my file backups and to do my photo and video editing. Every video and photo that I've posted online since I got the iPad Pro has been almost exclusively edited on the iPad Pro. So in this video I'm going to talk to you about the experience of switching from Mac to iPad and from switching from Final Cut Pro specifically to LumaFusion, and I'm going to talk to you about the pros and cons of the entire process, because there's a lot of pros but there's also a lot of cons. I'm going to be doing a separate video of the experience switching from Lightroom Classic to Lightroom CC because that's a whole different ball game, and there's a lot of things that I've learned from that process that I feel would be valuable for somebody else who wants to make that switch. But for now, let's jump into the pros of using the iPad Pro and LumaFusion for editing your videos. Number one, and most important of all, that I found in a huge time saver, is that there's no rendering times, there's no processing times. You just drop your footage in, you drag it into your timeline, and it just works. You don't have to wait for it to process 4K files. You don't have to wait for it to render if you add color corrections or effects or transitions. It just goes straight to it. There's only one thing that I found that takes a bit of processing, and that's if you want to reverse the speed of a clip. So if you want to go backwards with a clip, it will take the entire clip that you've shot and make a new clip out of it and reverse the time, which is a bit of a bummer that it doesn't do it for the specific selection of the clip. It has to take the entire thing, but that's really a small thing that you'll have to wait if you want to do that. Number two would have to be how simple the software is and how good the user experience is in general. LumaFusion is extremely simple to use. It could just be that it doesn't have all the features that a Pro editor has, but it's really simple to use and it just makes your workflow much faster. And this takes me into my third point, which is working on an iPad which is so light and fun to hold and touch and feel. The entire experience is just a lot more fun, which makes you want to edit a lot more than you would if you were just sitting at a desk editing. So I find myself taking my iPad on the road and editing when I have some free time, sitting on the couch editing, sitting on the toilet editing sometimes, and I wouldn't do that with a laptop. You know, laptops get really hot when you editing video and you have it on your lap. It shouldn't really be called a laptop anymore because you can't really put it there. And it's a lot more cumbersome to carry around, and it's not as much fun as interacting with a piece of glass where you can touch everything and move and enjoying the process of seeing your videos come to life. So my next pro is again on the time saving of things. When you finish editing your video, you hit export and it exports either at real time of how long your video is or even faster. No matter if it's 4K, if it has a lot of color correction, if it has a lot of effects, it will export really fast, which is another thing that you used to, you know, when you're working on a desktop or a laptop, you set export and you go and grab lunch and come back and it's still exporting your video. So now let's jump into the cons list. The list is a lot longer, I will say, but these are a lot of things that I know that the company behind LumaFusion is working to fix and will be releasing updates over the coming months. But these are all the problems that I have found as of now that I'm making this video that kind of annoy me or I'm missing from an editing software. So I bought the half terabyte iPad on purpose because with the money that I saved from getting the 1 terabyte one, I could buy a 2 terabyte external hard drive, which made a lot more sense to me. However, now LumaFusion won't let me edit directly from the external hard drive, which is a bit annoying. So what I have to drag in all the clips into the iPad before I can start editing my video. So from what I understand, this is something they've looked into and the speeds are just not fast enough. I'm pretty sure USB-C to USB-C on the iPad would be fast enough, but they have to cater for a wide variety of external accessories and devices where their software is running. So I can understand that. But that's one limitation that I found that I'm not a big fan of. Number 2 is LumaFusion doesn't have any stabilization. So when I was editing on Final Cut Pro, I would use that feature a lot. But now that I don't have it anymore, I'm either a lot more careful with how I shoot, I use a tripod a lot more often, I use a gimbal, and in general I try not to make as shaky footage as I would when I'm shooting. Now saying that, if I have a clip that is way too shaky and I want to add some stabilization to it, there are other apps that you can use to do that. Obviously you have to put the clip into that app, export it, and then put it back into LumaFusion. So the app that I use to stabilize footage if I need to is called Emulsio, and it's a free app if you want to do some basic stabilization and have a watermark, but if you want to remove and get all the features, it's £8 on the App Store. But to be honest, right now I'd rather shoot it correctly when I'm shooting than having to stabilize it later. Another feature that we're missing is noise reduction, and that is also something that I used to do in Final Cut Pro using Neat Video, which was a plugin. And again, there's other apps that you can use if you really want to do that, but I haven't really bothered because I've realized that most people watch these videos that I make on YouTube on their tiny phone screens, and they will really not notice if there's a bit of noise in my clips. I also try not to crank my ISO too high to get all that noise to begin with. So again, it's making me more thoughtful when I'm shooting rather than trying to fix everything in the edit. Number 4 thing that I'm missing right now is speed ramping. You can speed and slow down clips, but you can't add the in between the ramp, which is something I used to use a lot. This is something that actually I would really enjoy if they added, but as of now, the videos that I'm making, I'm not using it. And if I really want to use it, I will go back to my Mac Mini, which I bought a used Mac Mini, which I use as a file management device, and I will just do that clip with the speed ramping that I need in there and then airdrop it to the iPad. So that's one thing that I would return to my Mac for. And while we're on speeding clips, you can't speed up a clip more than 6 times in LumaFusion. So sometimes I like to shoot time-lapse videos, so I just shoot a video and then I speed it up to make it look like a time-lapse, just because it's a much simpler process. And this kind of puts me off doing that because obviously 6 times is not fast enough. Now what you could do is you could start a new project, put your clip in there, speed it 6 times, export it, put it in another one, speed it 6 times again, export it again. Anyway, there's other apps that you can speed it up as well, but again, this limitation makes me shoot a proper time-lapse when I'm out in the field shooting rather than doing that process, which to be honest creates a huge file anyway, and I was just doing it because I was lazy in the field. So this makes me a better shooter again. When it comes to color grading, you can do most of the color grading that you're used to. You can add LUTs and you can add as many color correction layers as you want. However, what we're missing is scopes and histograms, which makes the process a bit more of a guesswork. Basically, you look at your screen and you hope that everything is right and will play right in other screens. I really hope that is something they add in the future, because that is something I use often to check that my highlights are not clipping or my shadows, and I would enjoy that as a feature in the future. Con number 7 is that the software is not cross-platform with a computer, basically. If you start your edit on your iPad, you will have to finish your edit on your iPad, or you can take it onto your iPhone if you want, and you can back up your entire project in other devices. You just can't continue editing them. Now, the developer has said that they're working on an export tool that will let you export an XML file to macOS and use it in Final Cut Pro. That would be really great, because that would mean that you can do a rough edit on the go when you're traveling, and then you can bring it into Final Cut Pro to do all the final edits and tweaks like color grading and sound design and all that kind of stuff, which is by far better to do on a full-fledged editor. But as of now, that doesn't exist, so I'm letting you know. Next, don't expect any fancy transitions or effects. This is still an early development software and those things don't exist as of now, which has made me rely a lot less on all that funky transition kind of trend that is going on YouTube right now, which I found myself dabbling in, and it definitely didn't help me develop storytelling skills, and I used it as a crutch more than as a feature. So it's not something that I would really care if they add it in the future or not. One thing that really frustrates me is that you can't select multiple clips and move them around in your timeline. Right now, it's only a single clip, select and move around, and that makes editing a video that would be more of a montage a lot harder, because you can't just add a lot of clips to your timeline and then decide, oh, I want this part of the video to be in the start. You have to drag every single clip one by one, and I've done it, it's not fun. I know they're working on this feature and they said that an update is coming soon with it, and I really look forward to that because I find myself needing that feature often. So in conclusion, as you can see, the cons are a lot more than the pros. However, I do not regret buying an iPad Pro and switching from a Mac to it. First of all, the iPad Pro was much cheaper than getting a MacBook Pro, and I would have gotten a MacBook Pro if I were to get a new computer, because I'm a massive Apple fanboy and I'm a Final Cut Pro user, so I didn't want to switch to a PC and to use Premiere. So the iPad Pro was a great choice for me. It's also a lot more portable, as I said, and a lot more fun to use. This makes me a lot more productive than I was before, and it makes me want to edit a lot more than I did before. Are there things I'm missing from having a full-fledged computer? Yes. Do I find myself going back to my computer to do things often? Not as often as you would expect. Am I ready to switch 100% to an iPad Pro and throw away my computers? No, there are still things that I need them for, and this is basically to complement my workflow when I'm traveling, and it's a device that I find I use a lot more often than my computer nowadays, and overall, I'm super happy. Now, what you can do is you can go back to my previous 3-4 videos on my channel. You can have a look and you can tell me if you noticed that they were edited on an iPad Pro and not on a computer. Because all of those I edited on the iPad Pro, and I think they've turned out just fine. So let me know in the comments what you thought. Now, if there's anything I missed on this iPad LumaFusion review thing, let me know in the comments. If you know of a better way of doing things on the iPad Pro, let me know as well so I can get better at this. And tell me, are you thinking of switching to an iPad? Did this video help you decide? I hope it did. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like. Consider subscribing for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.